Hello and welcome. This is Generosity Talks, and we are here with Suleiman Rahman from Diverse Force. I am horrible at bios, and I'm going to forget something. So, Suleiman, can you tell these good people the amazing work that you do at Diverse Force?
I appreciate that and glad to be on, Monique, and welcome everyone, I think, who's on LinkedIn and anywhere else as well. My name is Suleiman Rahman. I'm the CEO of Diverse Force, and Diverse Force is really an evolution of a professional network that we've built over the last decade plus of professionals all throughout the greater Philadelphia region and has since expanded as well and started Diverse Force in 2017 with the real intention to build that next generation of leadership, civic and business leadership, as well as to provide and connect folks to opportunities as well. We have an executive search arm of our business, and we also have our Diverse Force on Boards program, which over the last 6 years, we've graduated 275 folks. Monique, you being one of them, of course, as one of our alumni. And we partnered with University of Pennsylvania back in 2017 with a mission to train Black and Brown professionals to be effective on boards, not just diversify or have diverse faces in high places, but to make sure that impact is felt on those boards. So we have a 6 module, 6 month board training program, and then we match folks on boards throughout the region. And we filled over 240 plus, so our alumni have filled over 240 plus board
Wow.
seats throughout the region post graduation with our program. And we'll be graduating cohort 10. We postponed it because of the hazardous air last week or this weekend. And but actually, June 23rd, we'll be graduating cohort 10. And that'll mark 275 alumni of the program. So really excited about that.
No,
Uh,
congratulations. That's amazing. I didn't realize it was that many people. That's pretty amazing and impactful, right? Because of all the nonprofits and all the boards, like you're really making a change around diversity and impact in Philadelphia and in the region. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that because we're here to talk about the alphabet soup of social impact. So how did you become so, I'll say, multilingual in this space, understanding all of the acronyms and all of the letters that really make it up?
Yeah, mainly it's been me personally serving on many different boards across different sectors as well. So back in 2000, I think it was 2009 is when I first started serve. 2008, 2009 started serving on boards, and eventually in 2010 was elected to chair the board for the African American Chamber of Commerce. So that alone, you're dealing with corporations, you're dealing with
Right.
kind of nonprofit lens, you're dealing with different sectors and navigating to create value proposition, if you will. Since then, Mayor Nutter appointed me to PIDC's board, and I've served on a dozen plus organizations over the years, and I've chaired some boards, been on executive committee, and then just the diversity of folks that are on the boards. Many times bring different words and different acronyms, and I'm one that when I don't understand a word or acronym, I may nod in the moment, but I'm going to now it's Chat GPT. Chat GPT used to be the trusty old Google back in the day. So
Right.
and now being an executive search, we have to be, kind of have that cross sector fluency, if you will, to be able to hear what folks are looking for, understand it, kind of understand the lens and the perspectives and the kind of skill sets that folks need. And many times language is different in different sectors. So being able to interpret that in a way that we can find some commonality around competencies, where
Right.
those competencies are transferable and not, be intimidated by the language, but find where there's commonality as well.
So, where is that commonality, right? Like, what is your vision as it relates to these sectors, and what is the commonality and the through line that you see across them?
I mean, ultimately, when we talk about the social impact sector, right? Most at the root of it is that folks want to, well, I'll say this: the outcome is should be to do good, right? But the motivation isn't always as authentic as that. So many times, it's finding out what the motivation is of the organizations when they come to them giving their philanthropic giving. We typically we look at it, as far as different sectors, right? We have public, private, philanthropic sectors, or you can look at it as government, you can look at it as corporations, you can look at it as kind of private foundations and all the different grant making organizations in that space that give to 501c3s. And what you find is that each of them many times are saying the same thing with different language, right?
Right.
So it's really being able to say, oh, when they say this, they mean this, right? Or they the same as saying this. But many times you can be confused and not understand. But also many times the language is different also because there's also different motivation behind the language, whether it's getting a tax
Right.
write-off or is it, positioning yourself ESG alignment, if you will, environmental, social, and governance alignment, because there's capital like the BlackRocks of the world or other big firms who are saying, we're going to only invest in mission aligned organizations. So there's different motivation behind sometimes the language that folks are using, and the outcomes they're looking to get when it comes to the goodwill or the impact it has on the organization as well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned ESG, and can we take a minute and go through the alphabet soup of social impact? Like, what are all the different acronyms that people should know about, regardless of what side of the sector line they're on?
Yeah, I'll throw a few out there. Just kind of I'll follow that same kind of thought process of thinking about government, right? When we think about government, and that's probably the least experience I've been is moving in the government space. I'm more in the private and philanthropic sectors, if you will, navigating that space and the nonprofits. But when you think about government, you can you'll hear they'll use the terms like NGO, right?
Right.
Non-government organizations. You may hear about the Sustainable Development Goals, right? SDGs, right? We'll throw those words out there. You'll hear all the alphabet soup of all the different departments or divisions, like the HUDs, and the SBA and the EDA and EPA. So you'll hear all these different departments that have different budgets and different initiatives and provide different grants. NIH, National Institute of Health. So there's different resources that are coming from these different sectors, and many times they'll throw it out there as if you just know. You should,
Right.
know. So it's important again to be able to follow along the language, if you will, and the acronyms that folks just assume that you know when you're part of their sectors, right? So
Right.
many times folks will throw acronyms just to see if you understand it, to kind of vet you,
Like a test.
test to see if you understand. And then when you think about like the private sector, you'll hear a lot of CSR, right? Corporate social responsibility.
Right.
You'll hear the ESG that you talked about, which has been, really a big term that's been growing and over the years as far as environmental, social, and governance. You'll hear DEI a lot. Obviously, we have a lot of statements that went out, a few years ago.
And now it's everything. I just heard ideal. There's ideal, there's which is inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and leadership, I believe, something like that. There's Jedi, there's we're going all there's a whole alphabet soup around DEI now as well.
It's getting longer. You have the for belonging, the J for justice, the A for
Right.
accessibility, and some folks just make some stuff up every once in a while as well. um,
Yeah.
I remember before, and it continues to evolve. It used to be corporate. I remember when talking to corporations, didn't add the E. It was more like diversity and inclusion. That was kind of their focus. Uh,
Right.
Pre George Floyd, if you will, a few years. It was more DEI was in the nonprofit sector. So I would change the presentation to DEI in the nonprofit sector, which talks
Interesting.
more about equity, where the companies, they may say, well, equity is, for the social impact sector. We're not going to level the playing field for folks, but we're going to be diverse and we're going to be inclusive to those who are in. Maybe that's more designated for the nonprofit sector to level the playing field and make sure folks get access to the information and training. So it's been more adopted, obviously, over the last few years, and now we've seen DEI in the for-profit sector as well, and more likely to see more letters add as the first it starts usually in education. So higher ed typically starts start
Okay.
adding more letters because that's all intellectuals have to do is think about what we're missing out on and getting deeper, and then it typically goes into the nonprofit sector and then it moves into the corporate sector many times. So you have that in the kind of the for-profit sector. You think about Also the nonprofit sector, same thing. You'll hear the DEIs, you'll hear the also with philanthropy, you have social impact organizations. So you think about or social entrepreneurship. When you think about organizations that are not 501(c)(3)s. So again, you
Right.
have the alphabet soup there as well, where you have 501(c)(3), 50(c)(4) or sixes, where it might have more advocacy components to it
Right.
and political components to a 501. And philanthropic organizations will only sometimes give to a certain designation, which is typically the 501(c)(3) because of the tax benefits that are
Right.
associated with that. But then you have program related investments as well, where there could be a for-profit organization that has a program
Right.
related to. I know LendFest. You've been partners with LendFest, and there's certain types of programs that are aligned with their mission that they could
Right.
also still give to in the for-profit sector. You have mission aligned, mission related investments. So similar terminology, same words. Social return on investment, right? So not just a financial return on investment, but
Right.
think social return on investment. If you're thinking about that in the corporate lens, you look at the positives that it has, the negatives that it has, and there's a whole equation around calculating what that social return on investment is as well. So again, a lot of terms throughout there, and you'll hear during the pandemic, we heard a lot about CDFIs.
Right.
Certainly the board for a pretty large CDFI now over the years. But I remember when folks didn't really know what CDFIs were, but you heard a lot more, at least the small businesses did, during the pandemic. Stands for Community Development Financial Institution. And these are organizations that are financial, kind of like banks, because as banks are getting much bigger and they're doing less small loans because it just makes more sense to do a $5 million loan than a thousand or $50,000 loan. So
Right.
these advisors are coming in to make sure that we still have these community banks, if you will, can offer low cost loans, and they work closely with banks under another acronym, which is CRA, which is the Community Reinvestment Act, right? So the Community Reinvestment Act requires banks to make sure they're doing loans, make sure they're doing investments and doing service in communities in order for them to continue to expand and buy new banks and things of that sort. So they have to be in alignment with the CRA. And when you understand what their compliance requirements are, when you understand what their motivation is around that, many times you can also go after dollars in those spaces as well and create programs that are aligned with your mission that can tap into multiple sources of dollars.
So those were a lot of letters.
A lot of
And
letters.
and I know you said, between Google and Chat GPT, like you were able to educate yourself. As a recruiter though, like as someone who leads a recruiting firm and you have companies that are looking for leaders that are helping them build their impact, one, what do you suggest that people looking for those types of jobs do? But then on the other side, what should companies look for in new leaders to help them on their journey to social impact?
Yeah, that's great. And we have a team of seven who probably speak even more to this stuff as they're delving into, or at least on our search team, we have a team of seven there who would do this every day, helping companies to have those, find out where there's commonality between that different language. And I would say for the job seeker is to understand that their skill sets are transferable just
Right.
because there's different acronyms or different sectors, really understanding what that language means so they can understand how they fit into it. For instance, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. When you look at ESG, the S and ESG can be translated very quickly, very seamlessly into DEI as well. So the
Okay.
social aspect of the environmental, social, and governance, the DEI falls under S. So understanding how those interconnectivity is with the different language and
Right.
understanding transferable skills. And when you're looking for, again, these careers and the job description is asking for these different acronyms that are relative to the industry that they're in, understanding how to make sure you re-up your job description to use the same kind of language as well. Because many times recruiters can be lazy, and they don't know all different acronyms. So you put DEI and they say we want the social, aspect of ESG, and you're not connecting those. They're not connecting those dots because and sometimes it's also the algorithms that don't connect those dots. So the algorithm may be looking for certain terms and you're using a different industry term. So making sure you upgrade your resume in order to make sure you language it in a way that's going to be more likely to pass the initial evaluation
Mhm.
of these resumes to get into get into opportunity to have a conversation with recruiters. From an employer standpoint, I would say, when we're looking at our missions, you want to use all the pieces on the chessboard, right? You want to use the king, the queen, the bishop, the pawn, the rook. Use all the pieces. Understand how they could play on the chessboard to move towards our mission.
Right.
So understanding the different sectors and how we can leverage the value proposition that we have to our community, our social value proposition, and how it benefits organizations, how it benefits the philanthropic sector, understanding what their kind of philanthropic thrusts are or positioning is, find out what the corporations, what their philanthropic interests are, also the underlying motivation behind it, whether it's
Right.
CRA, community benefits agreements and all kinds of more things of understanding what your leverage is in that respect and how you can position that. Or if it's the government, understanding what their motivation is in that respect, and also understanding at what phase of innovation, social innovation, that those funders are willing to invest, whether it's in the more innovative, kind of high risk stage, or they just want to find something that already works and actually fund that. So, as a organization that's looking to achieve a mission, having someone with that cross sector fluency, that cultural agility
Right.
as well, is someone who can really leverage all those tools in a meaningful way and be more creative. But many times you find that person who is kind of out and about, shaking hands, kissing babies, understanding all that cultural fluency may not be the person who's also who may be operator as well, because they're out in the streets and that's what they do. So understanding also what kind of support that person might need as well within your organization, and how that organizational chart is aligned to make sure that you have the right people in the right place as well.
Is there any difference in the way that you recruit? Like, do you have any examples of a recruiting process that you went through for, maybe it wasn't even a CSR actual position or a social impact position, but it was for a position in a company that is really focused on social impact?
Mhm. Yeah. So we recently did a search for FS Investments, their head of impact. So understanding what their goals are from a corporation standpoint, aligning it with the industries that they're in, but also the social impact that the founder, the CEO wants, and that the leadership wants within the organization. So again, identifying where do you find these people, right? You have to identify where that person may have built those skills, unique set of skills that fit into that. And a lot of times it is us also understanding the cultural diversity in these different sectors to be able to reach out to folks and say, you know what, although that they don't look like they're their profile,
Right.
uh, they have some evidence that they have the the skill sets, right, to do the job. So our team just does a great job of doing that, getting folks, and that's how we open up and are able to have more a diverse slate of candidates. And many times our clients are very impressed with the fact that we bring such a diversity of backgrounds, not just kind of diversity of demographics, but a diversity of backgrounds. And I'll say, wow, I never thought about this person,
Yeah.
being a good fit for this job, but now it makes sense. Once we kind of go through we do a whole hiring guys, like here are the skills that people need. And then, when we have a chance to interview folks, we're understanding where those skills were developed. And we have a whole rubric that will explain why this person has this particular skill. Although it may not have come from the university you thought it should have come from, or the job, or the referral that you thought it should have come through, but instead this is a skills first approach to and it works out really well, and folks are pleasantly surprised that they're able to tap into new dimensions or pools of talent that they never tapped into, and they tend to work out really well. So that's
It's
one.
pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. I think that a lot of times, people look at resumes and are like, "Oh, you don't have that experience," and they don't understand the translation of skills, so they just kind of write someone off when you're writing off some potentially good candidates. So I actually kind of applaud you, well, not kind of, but I actually applaud you for figuring out a way to do that. Um, in a process that works, right? So that's interesting. And I'm sure a lot of other companies, maybe they are, but I don't think that a lot of other companies are actually looking at that. So I really applaud that. Um,
I'll just add this one thing. I think
mhm.
one paradigm shift that folks have also is we've been trained to have this culture fit, right? And we'll typically look and use that lens incorrectly and end up having people that look like everyone that's in your company already, versus the lens of who's a culture add, like who's going to add a dimensions of diversity
That's
that will round out our team in a way that we don't have blind spots, right? So that's one of the things early on we say, hey, we're not looking for just a culture fit. There's some aspects of your culture and values that we want to fit, but then there's a culture add, dimensions of diversity that we want to add that gives you more of a holistic view to tap into new markets, to access new communities, to be able to really take your business to the next level. And that's why when companies or when research is done around diverse organizations, those are the reasons why they end up being more profitable, more successful, tapping into more communities because of that culture add, not culture fit.
that's awesome. Excuse me.
No problem.
Um, so you talked about FS Investments, which was the head of impact. What about the other way? Like maybe it's not an impact position, but the organization itself is impactful, right? Like maybe and does that matter, right? Like if you're going into an organization, and I feel like it does, only because when we look at the way that they say millennials are looking at jobs and looking at organizations that are making an impact in the communities and things like that, um, are you looking at positions that might not be the head of impact, but they're in an organization that is making impact? does that do you go down that same process, or is it just a regular job placement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's as you mentioned, there's folks who want to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? They want to be part of an organization that is making a difference. And I'll give an example. We were looking for a role, a CFO role
Hmm.
for Ben Franklin Technology Partners, in fact, and that's an organization that's making an impact. They're making investments in organizations, and they're making investments in small and growing businesses, have that impact lens to it, and the talent pool that would typically have the diversity of skills that they were looking for are typically coming from a for-profit sector. They're coming from a much higher paying salary. So you wanted to find someone that was willing to potentially take somewhat of a pay cut, uh, and be part of an industry that's more impactful. So you have a lot of folks, you have boomers, you have folks who, have kind of made their money and say, you know what, I want to be a part of an organization that's making an impact. I've developed these set of skills, and now I'm willing to take a pay cut for that social return on investment, that emotional and spiritual revenue
Interesting.
that I can get
Are there
from
studies on this? Are you guys doing reporting on this? Just
what's
I
this.
I did not realize that that was the thing. A lot of people talk about millennials and how they only want to work for companies that are doing good, but I've never heard this side of it.
Yeah, that's true. And we just, as you do this stuff, you just start to see it. You say, folks who like, hey, listen, I retired, and I'm okay financially. I don't need more money, but I need more impact.
Right.
I want to give back, and I'm willing to step back into the social impact space, and not make as much money, and bring those skills. So that's that culture add, if you will, that diversity and dimension diversity that we can tap into, that I think many times we don't tap into.
That's interesting. I just want to talk one last thing, and more so about the companies and their impact, right? So we've got all these alphabet letters. We've got an amazing recruiting process to bring in someone that's going to add an element, and a dimension to our culture and to the level of impact that we're having. How do they make sure that they're driving impact, right? Like is there something that companies are doing from your perspective to ensure that they're making impact? And I ask this because on our consulting side, we worked with a company out of Chicago called Greater Good Studios, and they were struggling with understanding their impact. And after working with us and going through it, we had to say to them, like, you guys are also a consultancy. And because you aren't actually on the ground, you can't say that, well, this community is doing better because of you, because you're consulting the companies that are actually doing the work. So you have to find that balance and actually look at the change that you're making in those companies.
Mm,
So looking at that perspective, they were like, "Oh, okay, now we understand what our actual impact is and where we should be driving towards."
yeah.
What I mean, if we're hiring all these people, we have all these letters, like what should companies really be clear on in terms of the impact that they can make and with the people that they hire, right? Not just we think about social impact also. And we think about like nonprofits and you hire a director of development or someone and 6 months later, like, oh, they're not bringing in the dollars, they're not making a change. Like, no, this is a process. Like it's going to take at least 12 to 18 months before they really start raising those dollars that way, right? Is there anything like that that companies should be thinking about in terms of when they're hiring someone and how to actually understand the impact that they're making?
Yeah. I would say, and, even broader, the organization as a whole, the impact that
Right.
they can, right? That question that you asked around that. Many times we have these theories of change, right, in our own brain, and we think that we're moving the needle just because, anecdotally, we feel like we're moving the needle, but it's always good to have that third party lens to be able to evaluate the impact in an objective way. I can share, and I won't share the name of the organization, but they were just sharing, being very transparent that, hey, listen, we've been doing this work for many, many years, within this organization. That's a national organization. And they said we never really did an impact evaluation of how we were moving the needle. We were just hoping that we were. And they brought in a third party organization that did the impact evaluation. And they were pleasantly surprised that the impact was what they thought it was, but they never really had that evidence to it. So that's key to really make sure that we're not just staying busy and employing people, and perpetuating the same issues, or are we actually truly moving the needle? And then individually, making sure that there's opportunity. Obviously, if you have a strategic plan, the aim for nothing, everyone can just pretty much be busy. But if we're aiming for something, we have goals, we're looking to move towards a mission.
Right.
It'll inform the evaluation wherever that person sits in the organization with that impact lens as well.
Now that's awesome. And remembering to look back at those plans. I know a lot of people create strategic plans and put them on the shelf. So
Yes.
making sure that you're actually tracking, you have your key indicators that you're measuring along the way. No, this has been insightful. Thank you. And you kind of blew my mind about that. I don't know. Are they boomers? Is that the generation?
So yeah, you have the boomers born roughly between 1946 and 1965. So what's happening now in the social impact space is we are having that great, kind of not resignation, but the retirement.
Right. Retirement.
So succession planning is key right now. Are
Right.
we making sure we pass the baton to the next group of leaders, and are they ready for that baton at scale? As
Yeah.
well, so making sure we're preparing that and making sure we have that succession planning happening. You have a different mindset again with young folks. A lot of them are being entrepreneurs and doing different things and technology. So it's digital transformation is happening. So making sure that those things happen smoothly, but also our boards. That's one of the things that I'm really intentional about is making sure that we have a diversity of skill sets on the board. So organizations can have that cultural diversity, but also functional and skill set diversity to make our nonprofit sector much more effective and cover those blind spots and make sure that we're making an impact. And, as we talk about with our diverse force on boards, it's not just, again, about diverse faces in high places, but to make sure their presence is felt. And we
Right.
do provide, I don't know, Monique, when you're part of the program, we're talking about the domains of DEI. So it's 10 different domains where diversity, equity, and inclusion can live within the organization. Is at the board level, is at the executive leadership. It's through your talent management systems, your organizational culture, supplier diversity, and other areas that we can at least have a framework to say, are we here? Are we moving the needle in these areas? Are things different from the day when I walked in
Right.
to, to when I leave? And it doesn't have to happen overnight, but are you showing up? Are you being resourceful? And are you in a position to influence the organization for positive change as well?
No, that's awesome. How can if someone wants to work with you, if they want to learn more outside of Google and Chat GPT, like how can they get involved with Diverse Force to work with you, but also just to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about those different sectors, for those individuals who want to participate, who in our programming and events, whether through Black and Brown professionals or allies, and want to support and be within that environment, we go to Diverse Force and look for our BBEX network, going through our Diverse Force on Boards program, as far as those who are mid to senior level leaders who want to give back in more meaningful ways, but also be able to be woven into the fabric of the city, and develop skills and leadership skills that I know I've gained through my board leadership over the years, and the social capital and the relationships that you're able to build and make our city a lot more connected in that respect. So our Diverse Force on Boards program is great for employers, our executive search services, our opportunity for organizations and companies like Comcast, Accenture, and others who are sponsoring leaders into the program, Black and Brown leaders into the program, is a way for them to participate. But all that can be found at diverseforce.com, and also reach out to us. And there's some other resources that we have. And then we have our P4 hub, as we open up kind of our own playground, if you will, for all the awesome things that that we have an opportunity to participate in the ecosystem that we've built, in a way that we can. The P4, just like our conversation, another acronym, stands for Public, Private, and Philanthropic Partnership Hub, around advancing racial equity and excellence in our region. And for me, it's always been just, it's much bigger than just the business. It's, how do we move the needle around, eliminating so many disparities that we see in our community. When I look at, and again, this is where my team gets me on track, because I got this huge vision and mission, but they're like, all right, we need to stay in this lane right now. You can't
Right.
take the world. So I end up on all these different boards as well, trying to, really piece it all together and bring people together. But the reality is the disparities start in the delivery room, and they go to the boardroom. They go from the boardroom to the grave, if you will. And how do we close some of those disparities throughout that whole,
Right.
continuum, from infant mortality to to development, and early childhood learning to K through 12, and some of those defining KPIs, if you will, from third grade reading and math proficiency and career readiness. Then post secondary, everyone thinks that you went to college, you got a degree, and you've made it. But that's where a lot of our program is saying, no, they didn't quite make it yet. Still have to take them, take folks the rest of the way. And many times it's very serendipitous that we, in Black and Brown communities, many times that we meet the right person or get the right opportunity at the right time, that changes the whole trajectory of our career. And I use the word serendipitous because it's less probable in our community than it is in other communities, where it just it's much more abundant, where
Right.
or aunt, has a relationships. They get you the internship at the right time. They're able to mentor you or sponsor you or bring you into opportunities that is more scarce in our community. So how do we close those gaps in a way that I know that was what I benefited from, and siblings who who didn't accomplish as much, and have got caught up in systems that where those serendipitous moments didn't
Right.
happen. So how do we engineer that serendipity in a way that throughout that continuum, that people are given the right resources, the opportunities, the people, the connections to have much more successful lifestyles, and happier, wealthier, and all those great things, and then be able to give back in a meaningful way,
Right.
and be in a position of influence to be able to give back and strengthen that pipeline of talent that comes behind us as well. So that's the big vision. And my team keeps me like, hey, let's not gonna get
Beautiful vision. Beautiful vision.
us on roller skates out here, but just excited. I don't know if I share with you, I'll be chairing the board for the Mastery Charter Schools starting in
No.
2024. So
Congratulations. No. Did not hear that. Congrats.
And looking forward to having Joel Boyd, who's our Dr. Joel Boyd, who's our new CEO there. Scott Gordon, after 22 years, retired, and I've been on that board for 6 years. Just seeing the impact that they've had with K through 12 education and taking some of the worst performing schools in our city and
Right.
helping those students to have better options and grow in that way. So 14,000 students, 24 schools, within school districts. So the opportunity to innovate and work with that team to make things happen is where I maybe get my spiritual and emotional revenue with building a business and making sure we meet payroll as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Don't work too hard though, because I know you do sit on a lot of boards. So like, don't. That's a lot of. That's a yeah. Take it
Yeah,
easy. Take it easy. I want to thank you for your time today, and also just for everyone's knowledge. If you are interested in some of those positions that Suleiman and Diverse Force is currently recruiting for, you can find them on generosity.org in our job bank. But this has been an amazing time today, and I learned so much. I thought I was just going to learn about the alphabet soup, but I learned a couple other things as well that I'm about to go like research. Because if you're not going to write the report, I'm going to write the reports. But I give you the credit.
someone has to do it.
Someone has to do it. But I appreciate your time today. Um, Thank you for attending, everyone. Drop any comments, hit us in our inbox if you have any questions, or find us at diverseforce.org or generosity.org for future conversations and topics. Thank you all.
I think we own diverseforce.org and maybe forward is
It
diverse.
goes to diverse.com. You got to
Yeah.
do it. You got to do it because no one ever remembers that ending of the URL. Okay, diverseforce.com. Thank you for attending, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.